This week, ISIS released a video showing the brutal murder of American journalist James Foley. He'd been reporting on Syria's civil war when he was abducted 2 years ago. But some say the U.S. government could have done more to secure his release.
International terrorism is a warm issue in international relations where it has devastating effects such as destruction of property and death. This has caused most of citizens in fear. Terrorism is a big and serious threat to watch out for which, including international security. The attack on 11 September of 2001 was an international terrorism event that involved the United States, which has a superpower, resulting in war on terrorism as a measure to combat the issue. War on terrorism is an United States-led movement to combat the global terrorism during that time. So, what is the definition of terrorism? Terrorism basically is a concept that carries the meaning of a violent act committed to bring pain to others or to get something by forcing others to do something for him. It is either in traditional assassins, explosion, arson, hostage-taking, hijacking, abduction, sabotage, and hoaxes. By using violence or the threat of violence, wider audiences are put in a state of chronic fear or terror which takes a physical, psychology, social, political, and economic toll on society as a whole. It is, according to Seporovic 2006 and Smith 2006. Most of the terrorism are used to obtain attention, acknowledgement, recognition, authority, government, and the most vital, to rule a country. Terrorism also means as individuals or groups that use or threaten to use physical and psychological violence that have been designed to achieve political goals by targeting the public where it is contrary to international law and humanitarian values. According to Malekova and Kruger, 2003, the word of international terrorism means terrorism affecting citizens or more than one country's territory.
In today's world of globalization, terrorists are able to achieve their goals more easily, their targets are exposed in more places, and the news and ideas that channel people to use terrorism are spread more widely and faster than in the past. International terrorism includes international conflicts, mass death, and even global cyber terrorism. There are several issues regarding this international terrorism. First, the issue of 9/11. On September 11, 2001, the World Trade Center became the target of a massive terrorist attack that took the lives of nearly 3,000 people. The disaster also radically altered the skyline of the New York City, destroying the twin tower that over the years had become to embody the city itself. The impact of the two planes that hit the World Trade Center towers was more devastating than any of building's designers and engineering had ever imagined. The first plane ripped a hole in the North Tower from the 94th to the 98th floors, causing massive structural damage and igniting some 3,000 of the 10,000 gallons of jet fuel that the plane was carrying. The second plane hit the South Tower at an even faster speed, striking the corner and gashing the building from the 84th to the 78th floors. Not just that, the conflict between Israel and Palestine also one of the international terrorism which now nearly over decades. The Israel-Palestinian conflict is one of the world's longest-running and most controversial conflicts. At its heart, it is a conflict between two self-determination movements, which are the Jewish Zionist Project and the Palestinian Nationalist Project, that lay claim to the same territory. But it is so much more complicated than that, with seemingly every fact and historical detail, small and large, litigated by the two sides and their defenders. Traditionally, Most cyber attacks have been carried out by criminal organizations, with the majority of incidents failing to register on an enterprise risk scale of businesses that face significant setbacks. In 2017, this dynamic changed with the WannaCry and NotPetya incidents. These two attacks affected organizations in more than 150 countries, prompted business interruption and other losses estimated at well over USD 3,000 million by some companies, brought reputational damage and resulted in loss of customer data.
There are several terrorism groups in this world that always be the main news that opens the eyes of the world about the violence and terrorism they have committed. First of all is Al-Qaeda group from Afghanistan. One of the incidents that raised Al-Qaeda's name was when they were linked to the case in which two planes stormed the World Trade Center building in America in 2001. Al-Qaeda was found in the late 1980s by Osama bin Laden to fight the Soviets in the Afghanistan war. Among the events that have been linked to Al-Qaeda are including American embassies in Kenya and Tanzania are bombed, killing 224 people, which in the same year Osama bin Laden issued a fatwa against America on 1998, and also the event of suicide bombers attack American ships in Yemen on 2000. Next, the other terrorist group is from Iraq and Syria, which called militant Daesh group, or also known as Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, which is ISIS. ISIS, also known as Daesh, is known as a terrorist group because of their very cruel actions, which is like to make videos with the aim of intimidating and attracting the world's attention, including beheading, crucifying, and burning victims alive, and this has opened the eyes of the world about their cruel actions. There are also some destructive events they do that include suicide attacks in Baghdad, Beirut, and Ankara, which have killed hundreds of people, and also the event where a Russian plane at an Egyptian airport was detonated, which resulted killing 224 people on October 2015, and also several suicide attacks were carried out in Paris, which result 129 people were killed on November 2015. Besides that, another terrorist group is Medellin Cartel from Colombia, which is the leader of this group is Pablo Escobar. Starting from a small business in his hometown of Medellin, this cartel grew to control 80% of the US cocaine supply. The secret of business development is not just business strategy, but violence and terrorism. Anyone who opposes Escobar will be killed by Sicario, who is the assassin, which some of them are as young as 14 years old. From 1978 to 1981, the Medellin cartel tried to eliminate their competitors from Cuba and South America, saying that Even in those days, there must have been cases of strife between gangs. Furthermore, another terrorist group that known because of their terrorism action is Ku Klux Klan from United States of America. Ku Klux Klan or KKK is notorious for terrorism, and one of the modus operandi is lynching, which is hanging people in public places. Another case that made them famous because of their terrorism actions was the church bombing in Birmingham, USA. The church is known as a meeting place for civilian fighters and is often visited by black people. In 1963, the KKK bombed the church where 4 children were killed and 20 were injured.
Some cause of terrorism is modernization that produce an interrelated set of factors that are a major permissive cause of terrorism, as opportunities and weaknesses are created by increased complexity at all levels of society and the economy. Sophisticated transport and communication networks provide terrorists with mobility and a means of publicity. The Narodnaya Volya terrorists would have been the popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine was unable to operate without Russia's newly established rail system and could not indulge in hijacking without jet aircraft. In Algeria, the National Liberation Front adopted a strategy of urban bombing when they were able to acquire plastic explosive. In 1907, the Socialist Revolutionary Party Combat Organization paid 20,000 rubles to an inventor working on an aircraft to bomb the Russian Imperial Palace from the air. Other than that, the other cause is the failure or unwillingness of a government to prevent terrorism. The lack of adequate prevention by the police and intelligence service allows a conspiracy to be spread. However, the majority of states can be placed in the permissive category because terrorist organizations are small and clandestine. The lack of effective security measure is a necessary cause, as our limited information on the subject indicates that terrorism does not occur in communist dictatorship, and terrorist organizations have certainly been crushed by repressive military regimes in Uruguay, Brazil, and Argentina. There are several implications from international terrorism. First, increased uncertainty in the markets. This is because uncertainty is hated by all kinds of markets, and a lot of it is created by terrorism. The financial markets literally shut down and did not really recover until months after the invasion of Iraq in 2003. As global terrorism threats and publicity continue to increase, markets appear to be more and more resilient. After that, physical destruction is the most immediate and measurable impact of terrorism. Existing plants, machines, transport system, workers, and other economic resources are destroyed by terrorists. Acts of terrorism can blow up cafes, churches, or roads on a smaller scale. Large-scale assaults such as the bombing at the World Trade Center in 1993 can destroy property worth billions of dollars and kill thousands of productive workers. Next, the government and citizens are far more inclined to give up economic and political freedoms in exchange for security during times of conflict. Higher tax, higher government deficits, and higher inflation could result in this. The government often enforces price controls and sometimes even the nationalization of industry during war times. Governments are less effective than private individuals in managing resources for productive economic activity, particularly when those resources are bringing in to achieve a strategic military goal. The private economy suffers when governments militarize.
It is the recommendation and suggestion part. First, the recommendation is to standardize the data and be realistic. This is because, according to Pitch 2006, some of the organizations did not recognize as terrorists as they have not against the foreign policy met by United States of America. This is truly double standard because they are claiming that they are free and peace country but labeling one as a terrorist while the other not just being they are aligned for one ideology or thoughts. Next, the suggestion is to revise and spread the truth of religion. This is because, according to Pitch and Sled 2005, the terrorism ideology always related to religion, while there is misunderstanding between the interpretation and the act done by terrorists, misleading this info, not just harming lives, but affecting the strong unity among society in nation. Lastly, prevent radicalization earlier. Qureshi 2020, to spread misinformation and radicalization, terrorists and radicals use the internet. Parliament would like to mandate online business such as Facebook or YouTube to delete terrorist material within 1 hour of receiving an order from the relevant authorities. One of the focal points of the Joint Committee on Terrorism was radicalization and combating it. Members further advocate the segregation of radicalized prisoners in jails, as well as specific radicalization training for representatives of the European Union and member states. As a conclusion, it is dangerous to humans if terrorists does not be taken action by any authorities. Ideologies who are very radical on their fight often lead to harmful movement which threatens the people's future, countries or nature. Any people have their right to be free and peace in order to continue their daily routine as a human being and have their own way in living their life at the fullest. Terrorism is not the best way to solve any misunderstanding or dissatisfaction, but many other alternatives could be done, for instance through discussions or negotiations.